Okay, so before we begin, you're gonna need these three things. You need Python, you need VS Code, and you need a database browser. I sent these links in the chat, or you can type them into the browser. I'm gonna give you a few minutes to download this stuff. So while you guys are downloading the stuff, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about me and what we're gonna be doing today. So my name is Samvid Konchada. I'm in 8th grade. We're gonna be learning about Python Flask. So it's like a framework for making backends. So it's a web framework with Python, and it's pretty useful. So now this brings us to the question: what is backend? So front end is what you see in the browser. So like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's what you literally see when you open up a website. And then we have backend. So this can be written in the language of your choice. It generally has a database. It's where the information is stored, and it runs on a separate computer. So if you ever go to a website and you open it up, it's getting its information from a data center somewhere away from your computer. We're going to be learning how to write the backend today. So there's many programs involved in like writing a website, and today we're going to be using these 5 to make our website. So we have something called Flask. Flask is for hosting the website on a server for access from other devices. So like it's what we run on the server so other people can access the website. We're also going to be using Jinja for our render template engine. This is for like dynamically creating HTML pages. So we'll get into more about how we're going to use that, but it's pretty useful. On the back end, we also have our database. This is like where we store information. So if you're on some sort of social media website, the database is like where it's storing your messages, your posts, all that. This is all on the server. So that's why we need a service to store and access our database. And then in the front end, we have 2 more things. We have HTML and CSS. This is like literally what you see in the browser. And then we have JavaScript. So this is like front end logic. So for example, if we need to like communicate with the backend or something, we can make that happen with JavaScript. Okay, so now we're gonna get started and create a small application with Flask. So we're gonna open up VS Code. You should have this, and then open a new folder. Click open a new folder. Go to your home folder or anywhere really. Create a new folder called maybe Flask tutorial. We're gonna put all our code in here. So I'm gonna click new file, and we're gonna name this app.py. And then we're gonna create a new folder called templates. A new folder called, no, not inside that. New folder called static. And we're gonna open up the app.py file. So if you just installed VS Code and you've never used Python before, you probably don't have the Python extension. So you can click this extension button on the sidebar and search up Python. And you have to download the first one. The first one, click install right here. This will give you support for Python language. Okay, so now we're gonna start writing our code. So from Flask, import Flask. Okay, and this is basically what we're doing here is we're importing Flask so we can use it in our code. We're also gonna create our application. It's 2 underscores here. And then we're gonna create our routes. basically what we've written here is if anyone tries to access our server, we're gonna give them the return response hello world. And then now we're gonna set up our another two underscores. Okay, so this is a basic Flask hello world program. All it's doing is creating importing Flask to our program, creating a Flask app, defining what should happen if someone tries to access our website, and then it's running the server. So we can start open the terminal by clicking this new terminal. And if we have Python, we can probably run Python app.py. So send this command in the chat. So by running this command, we can start our server. And if we click this button now, we click open, and we open our website. So as you can see, it says hello world. We have a fully working Flask website right now, but now we want to make this into more. Okay, so this is where we're gonna expand our website. So today I was thinking we could make a to-do application. So it sort of stores your information in a database, and you can access the information from a website, and you can create to-dos, edit them, or delete them, and it can be a useful project to like sort of get an overall understanding of Flask. So in order to make this, we're gonna have to make some a little more adjustments. So we're not gonna only need Flask, we're also gonna need a render template. We're gonna show you what this means next, and then we're also gonna need requests. Add this, and then over here we want to edit a Flask setting that sort of makes it easier for us to code. File max age default. I'm gonna set this to 0. And then we're going to start creating our website. So first we want to configure what happens when they first try to open our website. So for example, when we opened our website, we've got this hello world page. So we want to make this a little bit more detailed and explain, like show our to-dos and stuff. So we're going to do something a little bit more than this. I'm going to put this in. And right now what we're telling it to do is open up a database, find the information from the database, and we're gonna return that to our website. But we don't have a database yet, so we need to create a database now. For this, we're gonna need that Splite database browser that we installed. You can open up the database browser, and we're gonna create a new database. We're gonna go into the folder where we created our project. We're gonna create it right here. We're gonna call this database to-do.db. Cancel there. Okay. Now we have a basic database file, and we're gonna create a table, and we're gonna call this to-dos. For fields, we're gonna ask for a name. We're gonna ask for a description. Okay, So we're asking for description and a name. And both of these have to be text, and we can click OK. Now we have a to-do, we have a table called to-dos. We'll be storing our name and our description in here. So we can click write changes, and we have that stored in our database. So if you see, we created a to-do.db file here, and it's we can't open this in VS Code. That's why we need a separate database editor, but we can see that it's been created. So now the website should be able to access the database. So now we're going to add some example to-dos to our database. So say walk the dog, v1, yeah, walk the dog. We're going to make this bigger. So the name, we don't have a description for that. We can put another one, maybe buy groceries. Description maybe need tomatoes, carrots, onions. Okay, so once we've created like these, we've added the stuff to our database. Wait, let me put enter here. Okay. Okay. This is in our description now. And we can write changes. So the stuff is in our database now, and if we start the website again and we open it up, by the way, you have to run this Python app.py command, or you can just click this run button. But every time you want to run the website again, you can run this Python space app.py command, and we can open this up. Wait. Put some more stuff, because in order to access our database, we need to use more packages, one called SQLite, and we're going to need this data on. So we run it again. Once we added import SQLite 3, we're going to open up this. We're going to hold control and click it. Click open. Wait. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. So we're going to need to add our HTML file. So for the front end, we're going to be using like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For now, I'm just going to copy paste HTML file in the chat, and you guys can just like create a new file in templates. Click on this and click new file. Name it index.html. Inside this, I'm going to copy paste some code in the chat, and you can just add that into that file. And then we're also going to need CSS and JavaScript. So click on the static folder, click make index.css. We're going to need to add some code to that, basic styling. We put another file called index.js. Inside, we're going to add some more logic. We're going to go over this in a second. So now we're going to kill this and restart. Open this again. And you can see it open. So it's showing the walk the dog task and the buy groceries task. Both of these are from our database. So we can see that it's accessing stuff from our database and displaying in the website. This is pretty cool. So next, when we click add, we need to make it functional to create a to-do. and to complete tasks. Before we go over that, I'm going to show you how our front end is working. So when we don't do return render template index.html, we're telling the server to open up the HTML file and return all this stuff to the client. So it's a lot of code in here, not too much, but I'm gonna go over, just skim over this. So we're defining like the layout of the website, and we're right here, you can see we're doing something called for row in to-dos and for row 0, row 1. So basically what this means is we can quickly like dynamically generate our templates or HTML files, if you remember, with Jinja, and that's why we're importing render template here. When we do index.html and to-dos equals to-dos, what we're telling the code is that it can use the inside HTML, it can use this to-dos variable and dynamically insert the to-dos into the web page. So that's why we can if we go over here and reload, you can see that it's dynamically loading the code, like the database stuff from the database, and it's going to show it on this HTML file. So after that, we also have a modal here. This is like what do you call it? This is like this is a pop-up that opens up when you click a button, and it has like fields that we can enter in information. We also have click these buttons and stuff, but in order to design this stuff, we're not writing all our code in CSS. Instead, we're using something called Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is a CSS, like set of CSS classes that are pre-built for us to use. So that's why we can just like assign a class for each one. So for example, here, we can just assign modal dialog or modal content. And it'll CSS will Bootstrap will automatically make this into modal because we're importing CSS up here. We're also importing stuff like jQuery and stuff that we're going to talk about in a second. So right now we have a Jinja render template sending our data to the website, but how do we make it work? If we go back to the to-dos application, how do we make it where if we click the plus button and click save, our to-do is going to enter the database? So in order for that to happen, we have to use another way to communicate with the database. So this is called Ajax, and if you see here, from the front end to the back end, this should be back end. To communicate from the back end to the front end, we're using something called Jinja render template. But to communicate from the front end to the back end, we can't use a render template. We have to use something called Ajax. So if you remember in the server how we created a route to return something when the client opened up the website, we can also add more code to make it where if the client wants data or to give the data to the server, they can open other routes. So we're going to add two routes here. One is called save to do, and one is called delete to do. So this is for the two things the client can do. If the client wants to save a to do, the client can try opening up this URL. If the client wants to delete a to do, the client will open up this URL. And now this comes to the types of APIs. So basically when we create this kind of route, we call this an API because this is not something the user generally opens up in the browser, but it's sort of like a website that an application can dynamically call inside the code. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna look at it. So there's three common types of APIs. There's like get API. This is for like receiving information from the server, but we're using Jinja render template, so we don't really have to use get API in our application. But we are going to be using two types of APIs. One is called post API and one is called delete API. So for post, we're gonna post is used to give the server information. So when we click save, we're going to be using a post API to send information to the server. We also have a delete API. So over here, when we click the check mark, we're going to be using a delete API to delete the to-do from the server. So if we go back to the code, so we find that save to-do is a post API because when we open up the website and click save, we're sending information to the server can add it into the code. So basically what happens when we save it, we're gonna access it to do the database. We're accessing, yeah, so we're gonna access the database and we're gonna put in the information the client's telling us to put in. With delete to do, it's almost the same thing, except instead of putting in information, we're deleting information where the client tells us to delete it. So this code is in the Python file. So I'm gonna copy and paste this. I'm gonna send this to you guys in the chat. You can copy paste this code into your Python file. And we also have our index.js file. This is where our logic is being run. I'm gonna also copy and paste this into the chat. Sorry for not doing this before. You should be able to copy and paste this now. But in our index.js file, this is where we're dynamically we're accessing the website, the backend, and responding to the actions the user does. So when you click the button, JavaScript's responding. So we're not using basic JavaScript here. We're using something called jQuery. That's sort of like a JavaScript library, I guess, a JavaScript package. We call it a framework that is useful for shortening our code in JavaScript. It does a lot of things. It has more features. But overall, we're going to be using jQuery for this project because we can use jQuery to do AJAX or call the APIs. So we're gonna I sent the code in chat, but basically what we're doing here is when we click this save to do button right here, it's gonna get the input fields, the name, description. It's gonna use the post API we created over here, and it's gonna send the data over to the server. And then it's just gonna reload the page. Same thing with delete. It's getting the information. It's looking at which to-do was clicked on. Yeah, it's gonna look at which to-do was clicked on, which to-do we're trying to check mark. So, for example, if you see here, we're adding this to our class actually. So remember when we're using Ginger render template, we're dynamically adding some information into our HTML file. Same thing here. So for each check mark, we're adding, okay, yeah, it's dynamically adding some information to this button, and we're going to be using this again in JavaScript. And when the button is clicked, we can take back that information, and we're going to send that to the server. It's also doing some stuff like when you click the button to open the modal, this pop-up, JavaScript's making the pop-up open. So now we can test this out. Send the JavaScript in the chat. So we click the add button. We can enter like a example to do. For example, let's say we had to do the laundry. And we can click save, and it appears here. So what happened when we click the save button is, if we go back here, the front end used the JAX to send the to do to the back end. The back end then added it to this database. If we reloaded this, but it's adding it to this database over here to do the laundry. It's adding it to the database file we created, and then it's reloading the page. So you can see it reloaded the page, and then it runs the Ginger render template again from the backend. So it asks for the information from the backend again, and then it displayed it again in the front end. So now we have something called do the laundry. This is also useful for the X button, so the complete button. So next we have the delete API. So let's say we finished buying the groceries. Click the check mark. It's doing almost the same thing. It's getting the ID of what the to-do was, the name of the to-do, which we dynamically entered into the like the HTML file, and then it's using that data to go back to the database and it's removing it from the database. And then when it reloads, the item is removed from the database, so it's no longer showed on the client. So that's pretty much it for this to-do application. So if you guys want to like look more into this code and like understand it for yourself, we don't have much time, so I tried to quickly show you guys the application and fast works. But if you guys want to like look into the code, I sent the URL in the chat. I'm also gonna send the presentation on the chat too. So let me find that. Yeah. So does anyone have any questions?